Welcome to the Stop Over Drinking and Start Living podcast, where high-achieving, goal-oriented rebel women come to learn how to live a vibrant and fulfilling life without requiring alcohol to get through it. No labels, no judgments, no saying you'll never drink again. Just real proven methods to help you stop rebelling against yourself with alcohol so you can drink less and do more. I'm your host, Angela Mascenik. Let's dig in. Welcome to episode 111, an interview with Michelle Barry Franco on giving up alcohol. Y'all, I have a special treat for you today. This interview and conversation I had with Michelle Barry Franco is awesome. Michelle gave up alcohol about 8 years ago. She calls it being on sabbatical. And I met Michelle, interestingly, at the retreat that I did at the tiny house last week. I hope you enjoy. Welcome, Michelle. Y'all, I am so excited to have a special guest on the podcast today. Her name is Michelle Barry Franco, and she's a speaker coach for founders. And I think you all will find this super interesting. Remember last week on the podcast, I talked to you about the tiny house and I wrote this special story about this experience with the tiny house. Well, I actually met Michelle on that virtual retreat that I was at the tiny house. And Michelle helped me and my fellow mastermind retreaters sort of develop and think about our rooftop message to help us reach the people who we want to help the most. So as you all know, by listening to the podcast, I help high achieving, sort of rebellious, badass women stop over drinking. And when Michelle was leading this workshop in the retreat that I was at, she mentioned that she gave up drinking 8 years ago. And since then, this past week, so much has happened. I've attended Michelle's workshop and developed my rooftop message a little bit more. And you all have probably gotten an email with a video from me. This all came from Michelle. But I wanted to have Michelle on the podcast because I'm interested in exploring the idea of women and their relationship with alcohol and how it can prevent us from going bigger in our life. And so I just wanted to have Michelle on here to kind of talk about her story, about her decision to give up alcohol and explore that topic. And this is just going to be a casual conversation. So I hope you all enjoy it. Welcome, Michelle.
Thank you. I'm so excited to have this conversation with you. That's an exciting little adventure. I don't know. There's so much backstory now I get to learn about.
So much backstory.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. So why don't you just tell us a little bit about that time in your life, what was going on with you, your relationship with alcohol, and how you came to that decision to take a sabbatical is what you call it, right?
Yes, that's right. Okay, so I grew up, I won't tell the whole story, but I grew up in a family with lots and lots of addiction, and a lot of alcohol addiction. And I was really conscious of that addiction and really then I got to learn about recovery. So my dad went into recovery when I was 12 or 13. But my mom continued to struggle off and on for more years. She is sober now too. And so I had sort of I think the gift, it was lots and lots of hard stuff, but I had the gift of seeing that that there was another way also. So I was and I also was very aware of the pain that it could cause for families, but also clearly for the people who were drinking. And so when I got into my teens and, all my friends were drinking and, I would hang out with them, but I just didn't drink very much. I was really conscious. I didn't want to go down that path. And so I was, known as the one who didn't drink. And if I drank a very small amount as I got sort of later in the, high teens. But then I got into my 20s and I drank before I was 21, but just not a lot, and I got into my 20s in wine culture and I lived in wine country. So there was this kind of other kind of drinking that was not the messy, kind of background I was familiar with, at least from part of my family experience. And so at first it was all fun, as it often is, and light, and I loved the culture of it. And then I just could see that I think the way it started to hit me was, first of all, I didn't want to go a night without having wine. I definitely had a my wine thing. This is before I had kids. And then I started to feel like I just didn't like myself. I wasn't as kind. Like there
Mm-hmm.
were just, the more, and so it was a little back of my mind, is this going to be a problem?
Mm-hmm.
But again, nobody in my family, most people in my family drink more than I ever did.
Mm-hmm.
So for them, I would not have been the one called out as she needs to quit drinking. Nothing ever happened really for me, except very internal. It became this sort of internal hell, really. So then I had kids. Then I had the whole, oh my God, I can't wait to have my glass of wine. I'm so, exhausted juggling the business, growing the business, and in my case, not growing the business, but always wanting to. But
Mm-hmm.
so there was that struggle, and then the kids, and pretty soon, what the culminating event, though there were a bunch of different ones, was I went to a party that we had thrown for my mother-in-law. And at the end of the party, we threw the party. So at the end of the party, we're all cleaning up, and then we went to a house afterward, just to hang out with some friends who had been there. And one of my friends really needed me, and I didn't agree with her still struggling with whatever this life struggle was, and I was a jerk. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and I saw myself doing it, but I had had too much to drink. Again, I wasn't the kind that presents. You wouldn't know.
Right.
Nobody would have ever said, Michelle is drunk.
Yeah.
But I just knew that what I was saying to her, I wouldn't have been saying. And this is after years of just all the time, should I stop? I don't like where this is going. So that was kind of how it went. So I came downstairs that day, walked into my mother-in-law's kitchen, sunlit kitchen, like everything's from the 1960s in there. And I smell the coffee, and I stood there by myself, and I thought, I can't do this anymore. I
Mm-hmm.
just can't keep, feeling like a jerk
Mm-hmm.
and knowing that this is the cause. So I just said, I'm going on a sabbatical.
Wow.
What happened? I had no idea how I was going to do it. I drank wine every single night. It was my slow drip anesthesia. That's how I did it. Not a bunch at once, but
Mm-hmm.
all as soon as I could start, just all throughout the night.
Yeah. Wow. That sounds so freaking familiar to my story. So I had both of my parents heavily drink, like every night, beer drinking, like the sound of opening a beer for me is
Yeah.
just like, it's like traumatic,
Yep.
and
Mm.
that smell. So I never drank beer. And I remember thinking the exact same thing as I was like a teenager going to high school, started like in college. I'm like, I should be careful. I need to make sure that this doesn't too far, like a
Yeah.
very small whisper in my
Yep.
head. And like
Hmm.
if I were to overdrink, then I'd be like, oh, I should back off a little bit because I don't want to
Yep.
be like them. I don't want to have to, you know what I mean? I would sort of
Oh yeah.
compare. And it would just be like, okay, I'd overdrink. I'm like, okay, better take a break.
Yeah.
Overdrink, and it would creep back in. Then I would take like, a few days off or a few weeks off or something like that.
Hmm.
I also lived outside of wine country. I lived in San Francisco.
Oh yeah.
And yes. And so I actually got married in a winery in Sonoma.
Ah. Mhm.
And so we would just take day trips to Napa
Yeah.
and Sonoma all the time. It was like
Yeah.
what we did. I had wine club memberships and I would entertain. And I was in pharmaceutical sales. So I entertained doctors at fancy restaurants up there and like
Right.
the whole thing. It just kind
Yep.
of grew and blossomed and it was pretty. It was fancy.
Hmm. Yep.
It wasn't like that Stroh's beer
Yeah.
that my parents drank, or
Yep.
like Jack and Coke or others, you know what I mean? Some of those
Yeah.
like dirtier type of alcoholic type,
Yeah.
labels that we had on it, right?
Yeah.
And then I had three kids, and all of that. And I also struggled with overeating and being on all the diets and trying all the different
Yep.
things, you know what I mean? I
Yeah.
know it sounds
I
like you don't.
know.
So it was an internal struggle versus
Yeah.
I never got into trouble. I never got a
Yep.
DUI. I never lost my job. You know what I
Yep.
mean? None of that stuff happened to me, but it was
Yeah.
a relentless, tiring battle that I had with myself for
Yeah.
20 plus years.
Yep.
Yeah. And
Yep.
it wasn't until I found coaching that changed that for me. Like
Yeah.
life coaching changed my life. Nothing else worked until I realized why I was drinking in the first place. I
Mm.
was trying,
Yeah.
like you said, it was that drip of anesthesia. I was
Hmm.
using it, I think, in the end, more to manage my anxiety with working, having three kids, managing all the things,
Yep.
and it
Yeah.
just wasn't working. So Yeah, it's
Yeah.
been almost 3 years for me that I haven't drank. I also
Nice.
don't say I'll never
Yay.
drink again. I
Hmm.
actually really like the idea of the sabbatical.
Yeah.
I just say I'm just not drinking right now. I may
Right.
decide later to do that, but I don't like
Yeah.
saying I'll never do it again.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like it kind of creates for me, and I think this happened more over time. I can't now I think the way I think about it is I can't really imagine choosing to drink again just because I love being sober so much.
Yeah.
But I think anytime for me, my brain, like something external, some voice, even if it's my own voice, is like saying you can never do that again, all of a sudden all the shackles go up, right? It's like
Right.
never. Yeah. So, but there was something you said. Gosh, our stories are really. I have three kids.
Oh,
So,
really?
yeah, I have three
Oh my
daughters.
gosh.
Yeah, super similar. But I think the other thing that I was thinking about as you were just sharing your story. I mean, this is why I really love having this conversation because I think this is happening a lot more now.
Yes.
But for so long, it was like you either had to be I'll tell you this way. I remember I went to AA for a little while. That's not how I stopped. I was sober for 2.5 years. My dad has been sober for many years, really active in AA. So he was always like, "You're gonna love it," and I did. By the way, I do love it. I love the rooms; they're lovely people, or the ones that I met and got along with.
Yeah.
Not everybody's lovely anywhere, but it was a really great experience. It just didn't quite resonate as the story for me, and I couldn't. I felt like I was always kind of not able to tell the full truth in that room either. And again, doesn't mean I'll never go to a meeting again because it's
Mhm.
wonderful conversations. But I remember telling my story at one of the meetings, and it was one of the more kind of hardcore groups. And I
Mhm.
remember one guy making some comment, way this is much year. I was more sensitive then, and it
Mhm.
was kind of like, oh my gosh, like your story is not that it wasn't hard enough. I hadn't
Exactly.
done enough, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And that was, I think, what I was most afraid of. But I know so many women, whenever I talk about getting sober or choosing to not drink, I
Mhm.
get private messages. I get, for people who have my phone number, text
Mhm.
messages, and
Mhm.
friends mention it and ask me and say they want to just see what it's like to try.
Mhm.
And it's because they know that you can just choose to not drink.
Mhm.
You can just choose it. You don't have to have your whole life fall apart.
Yeah, yeah. That I think that's what is hard, talking about the AA is like a lot of my clients would never want to go into an
Mhm.
AA room, or
Yeah.
maybe they've tried it and it just
Yep.
didn't resonate with them. They don't like, get saying that they're powerless, and
Yeah.
if they're not religious, they don't feel like it fits in. And also like what you said about like it just I didn't feel like my story fit in with some of the other people
Yeah.
in the room where it just wasn't severe enough, or like they're like, why are you here? You're not an alcoholic. Like because your outward issue isn't
Yeah.
reflecting of like what is going on
That's right.
internally, right?
That's
And
right.
so for me too, like I never would have considered going that because I didn't think that I needed it. Just
Yeah.
in my brain I didn't identify with what that meant.
Yeah.
But because of that, and because it's so popular, and it's really the
Hmm.
only thing that we first think of when we're going through this,
Yeah.
it holds people back from getting help, right?
Yeah.
Like, and
I
so
can
I
see
feel
that.
like people like you and I suffer so much longer than
Yeah.
necessary because we aren't aware of other methods out there.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
feel like my goal is to help communicate to women and people that you can get the help and you don't have to have this outwardly terrible looking life. Like you
That's
are
right.
just like a mom,
Yeah.
hardworking person, entrepreneur, successful, and like that internal struggle is legit, no joke.
Legit. And it is legit, no joke. That's the part I think that's even hard to talk about, even as you and I are sitting here having with so much resonance in our stories.
Mhm.
It's hard to even describe what it felt like.
Yeah.
And because you can't attach it in the same way, like, I can't say I got a DUI, I lost my kids. Those are heart-wrenching stories.
Yes.
And it is a different story and has its own set of things. And yet, even if I mean, I never once drove drunk. I've never driven drunk. And
Wow.
that doesn't, right? That's only because I had one experience when I was young and said I would never do that. And for some reason, I just didn't. Now,
Yeah.
listen, I picked my partners smart. All of them drive safely and they don't drink very much. I mean, every partner I've had, I'm married now, so just have one. But but so I was still smart. Like that doesn't mean I didn't drink while I was out. I just had
Right.
someone else drive.
Yeah.
See what so
Yes.
anyway, the point is not having all those stories, it's a little bit it feels kind of hard to say it felt like an internal personal hell.
Yeah.
And there was nothing on the outside and I was so good at hiding it
Yeah.
that there was nobody would have seen anything to be alarmed about.
Yeah. I think that describing the personal internal struggle is why people resonate with me so much, is because I remember that so freaking clearly.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
shame and the regret and the guilt that you feel the next day, even if you
Yeah.
didn't do anything dumb,
Right.
just like not
Yeah.
remembering causes,
Yeah.
like, what did I do? How did I get to bed? What time did I go to bed? I didn't finish watching
Yeah.
that movie. I didn't finish that book. What did
That's
I
right.
say? All of that
Yeah.
is painful, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then waking up and saying, I'm not going to drink. And
Yeah.
then come 5 o'clock, then you're drinking. It's just that
Yeah.
cycle was
Yeah.
a hell, right? Because you're
Yeah.
not following through on your commitments. And then you have
That's
this
right.
total lack of self-confidence that you could do it. And you tell yourself, I'm not going to do it. And then by 5 o'clock, well, I'm successful. I have all my shit together. I'm not at rock bottom. I should be able to drink.
Yeah.
And then that's where like our
Yes.
society comes in and says, you should be able to drink. We see the
That's
mommy
right.
memes and the
Yeah.
wine tastings and the beautiful sexiness of it. Right. And then we get
Mm,
those messages that are
yeah.
conflicting. It's just a mess.
Yeah. And you're right. The cultural thing I think is hard. And a lot of people initially would ask things like, well, how do you, and I worried about this.
Mhm.
What do I do when I go to these events? I remember
Yes.
having one friend who I said very early, this was years before I actually stopped drinking or started my sabbatical.
Mhm.
I said to her, I don't know, sometimes I think maybe we were out to dinner drinking and, having food. And I said, I don't know. I sometimes think I might want to quit drinking. And she's like, if you quit drinking, I don't think I'd want to hang out with you.
Wow. Yeah.
I was like, oh, it really like stung, even though I kind of got what she was saying because
Mhm.
that's what we did.
Yeah.
We went and had, really nice dinners and then we
Mhm.
drank and then we
Mhm.
had this great time after drinking.
Mhm.
Like, I don't know, singing or, dancing or whatever we
Right.
would do.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it is really those are real, those fears around what's so amazing is you wanna say, at least I wanna say as not an expert at this, I'm sure you know how to help people
Mhm.
move through that.
Mhm.
I just wanna say, like, just make it through that first part because all of that is so easy.
Yes. Yes.
It's
I
no
think that no, I
problem.
tell people all the time. I just had a conversation with somebody this morning. The story that we tell about how horrible that's gonna be socially in our heads is way worse than the reality
Oh,
of it.
totally.
People actually really don't care, and if they do,
Mhm.
yeah, they're probably not your
Yeah.
people, right? But
Yeah,
none of
yeah,
I haven't lost any friends from this. Like, I was
yeah.
just authentically me, and PS, it's no secret when you overdrink that other people don't know that you overdrink.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, they know, they see you overdrink. Like, it's not
Right,
even like you
right,
got crazy drunk or sloppy, it's just like
right.
when you have relationships, they see that they're
Yeah,
witness to your drinking. And when you say you want to cut back, I've always seen nothing but love and support. My husband was a little like questioning it. I remember I was
yeah.
turning 40 and I was on my sabbatical and he's like, are you gonna, because I had birthday plans. I had a winery booked and people
Oh,
were coming in to
yep.
meet me at this winery. And I'm like, yeah, honey, I'm gonna buy the wine. I'm gonna host the thing, but I'm not drinking. He's like, this is gonna be interesting. And I'm like, yeah, let's see. And then I think just the more experience he had
Yeah,
seeing me be my real self, like still happy, still having
yep.
fun, still socializing, he got on board and realized I wasn't going to be pushing my agenda on
Yeah,
everybody should be not drinking, including him, which is what I used to do. Like I used to
yeah.
push my agenda every time I would do a diet or something like that onto the people around me. So I didn't do
Mhm.
that this time, which was good.
Yeah, so he could do his thing and
Yeah.
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 Yeah, well, and, the friend who said that so many years ago, probably 4 years into my own sabbatical and probably hearing more and more about people, other
Mhm.
women like her choosing to not drink also, did her own sabbatical. So,
Wow.
while she said that, we stayed friends and, I think
Yes.
she was having, again, her own moment of
Yeah.
probably like, uh-oh, what does this mean if,
Yeah.
if she quits, it's like in her face a little bit. So
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so good. So I want to talk a little bit about, do you feel like, and just be totally honest, but do you feel like that relationship you had with alcohol before you decided to take the sabbatical impacted the success that you had in your business, or was it holding you back from going bigger in your life in any area? Tell me about that.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, it was such a hard time. It's hard to it's a little bit hard to pull it all apart,
Hmm.
but because there was a lot of stuff, I think I was, let's see, if it was 8 years ago, I've been in business for 12 years. I was 4 years in, which for a lot of people, they've got some traction by then. And
Hmm.
I had traction compared to just starting.
Hmm.
Um, but I was riding such a roller coaster in my business anyway. It's not like I quit drinking and then everything
Yeah.
came together.
Hmm.
So it's not that straight of a line, but I have no question in my mind that every relationship in my life, including my relationship with work, my relationship with my own willingness to be out, like,
Yeah.
visible,
Hmm.
changed and got better after
Hmm.
after I quit drinking. So my answer is yes. I don't know if you asked, did it get better? But the answer is yes, it did. But I would say, like a lot of things for me, I felt immediately better. I mean, I drank every day, always every day. So
Hmm.
I very rarely even tried to take like a break. I did a couple of other, I don't even remember if I called them sabbaticals, but I took a break and I was like, oh, well, that worked. I didn't drink for like 2 months, so I should be good. And I tried drinking again, moderating, and that was, ridiculous. And so that didn't work.
Hmm.
So I'd had a few of those periods, but after, and I had the clarity that comes after even a day or two
Hmm.
of not.
Hmm.
That's the cool thing about it, is you do have this, I think, big, for me, it was clear-headed, a new level of clear-headedness within a couple of days, but then
Hmm.
it just gets better and better and
Yeah.
better. So
Yeah.
back to that question,
Hmm.
I think it took a little while, but for
Hmm.
sure, I wouldn't be this clear. For sure, I wouldn't. There was anxiety, right? I would wake up with anxiety most nights because alcohol causes physical
Yeah.
sensations of anxiety. Well, I didn't have that anymore.
Hmm.
Amazing. Now I still wake up sometimes and can't sleep, but I'm perimenopausal.
Yeah.
So welcome to the next thing.
Yeah.
But this one doesn't feel the same, of course.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, for me too, I have a straight line because when I went into life coaching and I got my own coaching to solve this issue and the overeating thing,
Yeah.
I was like, holy shit, this is what I need to do for my life. You know what I mean? So then I started my business during that time. So
Mm.
I didn't
Oh,
have, I mean,
cool.
I was trying to be like a lifestyle blogger before that, like
Yeah.
maybe 6 months before I
Hmm.
went into life coaching. Didn't really know how I was going to make money online. I was
Yeah.
writing blogs, like just I don't know what I was
Yeah.
doing.
Yeah.
But then when I went through this, I'm like, oh, this is how I'm going to do it. This is the business
Yeah.
that I'm going to be. I'm going to help people do this. So
I love it.
definitely, I happen to know for me, it's more of a direct line, but it
Yeah.
also was the same timing, right? So
Yeah.
had I not stopped drinking, like I just know that distraction of in my head of that cycle of how
Yeah.
I couldn't have what I have now. I mean, I just don't think it would be possible. Yeah.
Well, I mean, the amount of time, if nothing else, because you do work in this industry, so
Right.
there's that,
Mhm.
but the amount of time and energy that you spend just thinking about the drinking and not drinking and, you
Yeah.
know, and what you did and what can I try this different, I
Mhm.
don't know, way of living my life. I think a lot of, I mean, also, I started personal development and coaching and all of that years before. So
Mhm.
I was really into all of that
Yeah.
already.
Mhm.
And I think it's so funny. So much of all of that also I wouldn't have had to do all that work if I
Yeah.
could just see that, alcohol was such a huge variable in there.
Yeah.
It didn't fix everything. Um, but dang, it just opened up this really beautiful spaciousness for me
Yeah.
to find the other answers.
Yes, I think that's
Yeah.
a really good way to say it. Like, definitely not drinking isn't like it's not all of a sudden you wake up and you're like, "Oh my God, my life is the best thing ever." Like,
Yeah.
I definitely feel like I
Yeah.
had an amazing life, but I also have emotions
Yeah, exactly.
and challenges, right? I just don't
Right.
try to solve it or escape it with alcohol.
Yeah.
It takes me longer to work through things sometimes, or I have to be uncomfortable with those negative emotions longer. Like especially with this pandemic, like, you know, wow, talk about
Yeah.
willing to be uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Not having
Yeah.
that buffer with the alcohol or the food
Yeah.
is like huge. So I feel like sometimes I suffer like more openly and like it's more
Mm-hmm.
painful, but I'm not suffering with the regret and the shame and the frustration and the anxiety from the alcohol at least. So
Yeah. Yes. I think about, oh, God, my heart just goes out so much to people who are in the midst of
yes.
whatever, whether you call it addiction or whatever it feels like to you, to
Mhm.
them, feeling like they can't stop doing something that they know isn't good for them and that they don't want to do anymore. Because to me, I am so grateful that I don't drink during this pandemic.
Me too. Can you
I
imagine
mean,
having that on top of dealing with
no,
no,
that's
it's
why
so
I want to say to people like,
this is not
you
helping.
think this is
No.
helping you. It's just
No.
not helping.
Oh my gosh, it
Yeah.
breaks my heart when because I have ads that run on Facebook and things, and like people will come.
Oh,
I can't imagine stopping
right,
drinking my wine. It's a pandemic. I'm like,
right.
it's exactly why you shouldn't be drinking.
Yeah,
Don't make it freaking worse.
that's right. You
you know,
don't know. They
they don't
don't know
know.
how good it's going to feel when they just get past that first part. That
Yes.
is what but I have to say, like for me, and I think this was just a gift of maybe tangling with it for so long,
Hmm.
is that when I quit, when I started my sabbatical, I just knew that I was done. And there's just so much, when I do get to talk to people about their drinking, just because somebody reaches out or whatever, that is just what I am always sort of seeing in the best way I can, just as another,
Hmm.
usually mama and woman. Often we have that in
Yeah.
common, but not always. Um, this knowing that them having that conversation, them just seeing the next, like the pain of it, the hurt of it for themselves, there will come a time when you know that you're ready to try it. And I sort of like to point to that feeling because then they'll recognize it. And you don't have to know how you're going to do it or that you're, like you said, like you're
Yes.
going to do it forever. Just recognize it when that feeling comes because it is a moment to honor and maybe give it a shot. Like there's
Yes.
real power there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Listen to that intuition,
Yeah.
that whisper that says you should
Yeah.
change this, and
Yep.
really honor that. That is you, the real you trying to get your
Yeah.
attention. I tell that knocking on the brain door.
Yeah.
Like
That's
that little
right.
knock, knock, knock. Hello.
Yeah.
We're ready to stop now. Like,
Yeah.
listen to it,
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And I like the idea of just trying it. I was talking to my clients about this other day, just like some of us haven't really even just tried,
Right. Just see
like
what happens.
just see what happens. Take it. I say, take it week by week. You can make new
Yeah.
decisions about it every
That's
week.
right.
You don't need to say forever or any of that stuff.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I also think about, for some reason, our conversation about the pandemic made me think of this. I mean, I have three daughters, and they're 16, 15, and 13. And,
Mhm.
but when I quit, they were -8 years. You can do the math. I'm
Mhm.
not great at quick math, but so they were little. And I remember so vividly going into their room to kiss them goodnight and read them a book or whatever. And I remember a couple things about it. One of them was just couldn't wait. Now, I wasn't one of the ones who waited till my kids were asleep to drink. I drank my
Either.
wine. Yeah.
Me either.
I know women who like still, who just did wait until they went to bed. I'm like, oh my God, how'd you do that?
No, it was as soon as work was done, while you're making
Yeah.
dinner, while you're putting
Yeah.
them to bed. Yeah, so you could numb through all of that
That's
process.
right. Anesthesia. Yeah. But I also remember holding my breath when I was kissing them goodnight. And I think because of my own history with my with a lot of so much addiction in my family and so much alcoholism in my family, or alcohol, yeah, they alcoholism is what it was and is. um they I remember the smells. Like for me, there's like how you talk about the sound of the
Yes.
beer. I remember the smells a lot, and knowing as a little girl the sound of the voice, like
Yeah,
knowing
the
the
change.
voice sound. And it didn't have to be dramatic. I knew early on in whatever the drinking path was.
Yep.
So as I was kissing them goodnight, I was so conscious that they were going to remember their mama smelling like wine when I kissed them goodnight. And one of the greatest gifts of of not drinking is that I never worry. I can breathe all over them. I may smell like all kinds of other stuff, but it's not going to be that.
I love that so much. No, that like, ugh. And I mean, I know because it sounds like we had similar experiences with our parents, but like my mom too overcompensated the way she talked when she knew
Yeah,
that it was past that.
yeah,
And I just remember that so vividly.
yeah.
And I don't remember myself doing that, but I remember this is what I remember. Like my kids were even younger. So like my oldest was 8 or
Mhm.
7 or something when I started working on this. And so my youngest was 2 or something. And my oldest would make me wine charms for my wine glasses,
Make you what? Oh,
wine charms.
yeah,
So they
yeah,
could tell which was mommy's wine
yeah,
glass.
yeah.
And like they don't remember me drinking it all now.
Right. Yeah,
Not even my old, like it doesn't, if they're like, like they're like scared of alcohol. I'm
yeah.
like, I
I know.
can't, my husband still drinks very occasionally, but
Yeah,
like, oh my God, I'm just so glad that they don't have those memories. You know what I
yeah,
mean?
yes, yeah. I
Really,
do.
I would just skip it all. Like sometimes I would just like cook dinner and then like I just would turn it over to my husband to put the
Yeah.
kids in because I couldn't even, I didn't even want to deal with it, you know?
Yep. Oh, totally. Yeah, that's the other thing is it seemed like having my wine was helping me move through all of that. And
Mhm.
it really did. Like I felt lighter. I was,
Yeah.
like there was definitely
Mhm.
that little period, right? But then when it wasn't until that's why I'm always like, just get to the other side and see what it feels like.
Mhm.
Wasn't until I got to the other side of not drinking and moving through a little of that, initial
Mhm.
period of a little bit edginess. Um, that I saw that was actually making it harder the whole time. They have way more fun putting them. I mean, reading to them or whatever we would do. Again, mine were a little
Yeah.
older, but we still did bedtime routines. And I'm never a huge fan. I'm not like the let me, I love when my husband puts the girls to bed. That was
Me too, still.
even post. Yeah, exactly. It's not like I was like the park mama either. But
Right.
um but I loved to have, the conversations with them that would be right before bed and
Mhm.
all of that I was missing and I didn't really know why. I thought I was taking care of myself. This was
Yes.
my self-care.
Right.
The opposite and I just didn't know, you
No,
know.
no, no. We don't know. We just don't know what
Yeah.
we don't know, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes. And like
Hmm.
I thought too, this is the only time that I have. I never get a break.
Yeah.
This is where
That's right.
you know what I mean? And we would use that
Oh yeah.
alcohol. What I think about, which makes me sad, is all of those moments I did miss.
Yeah.
It wasn't
Yeah.
necessarily because I was drinking, I don't remember. It's just I chose not to because I was
Yep.
more focused on giving myself that time with my glass of wine. And
That's
I
right.
don't
Me too.
have those memories to
Yeah.
look back on. It's just kind of a blur when they were
Hmm.
that young. And I
Yeah.
definitely used alcohol for postpartum depression, to
Hmm.
get through my third. I had 3 kids under the age of 5, not in
Hmm.
school at the same time, in this tiny apartment.
Mm.
But it did work. Like it helped me get through some of
Yeah.
that. So like
Yeah.
it just was a tool that it was the only tool I had at the time,
Yep.
you know?
That's right.
And now
Yeah.
I have more tools, which I'm so
Yeah.
thankful for. Yeah.
Yep.
So what do you
Yeah.
want to tell people that are considering stopping over drinking or taking a break or questioning their relationship with alcohol? Like, why should they do it? What do they need to think about?
Hmm. I so want it for them. If they're, if they're going through the tangle in their minds about it, I want them to know that there is a way to love their life, enjoy their life, probably even more than they can imagine right now. Like
Hmm.
I still love to dance. I still love to sing. I still have a great time I have a way better time than a lot of people at the events I go to, honestly. And I'm
Yeah.
not just saying that as like this person on the other side. I it so I want them to know that it's possible. And I would say for me, slowly but surely, what I did is read a lot of drinking books or
Mhm.
drinking to sobriety books. So I read a
Yeah.
lot of like Lush, and I can try to think of all the other ones, but there's My Drinking Story, and or just drinking story.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, there's a bunch of them. I read a lot of that, people's
Mm-hmm.
stories.
Yeah.
And their stories were way more intense than mine, but it almost didn't matter because I heard that thread. I heard that feeling, and that resonated so strongly. I found, I slowly found people online. I remember Aiden Donnelly Rowley had my drinking year. I don't know if you know who she is,
Mm-hmm.
Ivy League Insecurities. It was just someone I found online who
Mm-hmm.
was like doing a year of not drinking. And it was
Mm-hmm.
like, I found these little ways. And then now what I would say if I could go back is I would just find people, I would surround myself with people who were looking to not drink. And I would get myself support. I would get someone like you that could just support me through it because I was muddling around in it. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't go to any AA meetings until 2.5 years. That's not how I attribute my sobriety. It's just a phase that,
Something you
part of
explored doing.
exactly.
Yeah. I love that. That's what I recommend too. Read all the books, listen to podcasts, it like feed your brain with literature about the effects of alcohol and some of the, the chemistry of it. I had to unfollow all of my wineries on my Instagram feeds, like remove that stuff, start watching out for how the culture and the marketing infiltrates your life and how you make decisions when you see that kind of stuff, how you're influenced by some of the societal messages. And then, surround yourself by people who share some of those common goals. And it's hard to find, like, especially in real life. Like, I mean, this is real life online. I mean, it's hard, like, so me in my coaching community is where I found some of that. Even when I was doing it, it was alone. Like I didn't have like a group of women that were going through it with me. It was very much a self-guided type thing. So I love, obviously what I do, like support in the community that I've built, but it does make it easier when you know that you're not alone and you're not crazy for thinking some of the things that you think, right? When you're going through that. So what do you think is attributed to your success in being 8 years on the sabbatical? Like, what do you do on a regular daily basis even that helps contribute to this lifestyle that you have?
As far as the drinking part, again, for me, and this was same with smoking. So I used to smoke a lot, but always in hiding. So of course, nobody knew. I'm very much about the shiny exterior. Less so now, but I still see it. It's like my big thing, but I will say there was a moment. I have a mentor who just said this recently. This isn't how I saw it then, but when you genuinely see that, pouring alcohol into your body is poison in your body, well, then you honest to God don't want to do it anymore. It doesn't make sense in my brain anymore. So I will say that for me, I haven't needed to do a lot of things. Like I don't have to write all my feelings or reaffirm my words. I'm not saying, or, reframe my, thoughts or any of that, because I just see it this way. I love my life and I was miserable. And I really do remember that. So from that perspective, I haven't really had the desire to drink since my moment of, I think, insight, which it was a moment of insight and then a feeling of resolve. And that feeling of resolve has stayed with me. It's not saying it won't ever, fall away. And then who knows what I will do at that point. But as far as taking care of myself and my life overall, which possibly this helps me stay in that state of resolve, I am absolutely a believer in asking for what I need and want. In my family, with my kids, I set pretty clear boundaries. And I do not always take care of myself. Like I overwork. I definitely overwork. I overeat at times. So this is not all cleaned up in those ways. But I ask for what I need. And so then I do my best not to blame myself or other people when things aren't going great.
Oh, I love that.
Do my best.
Yeah. Well, I think too, just like going back to your feeling of resolve, that's what I feel like. The thought when I had my last glass of wine, I remember it very clearly. and had already gone through, 6 months of coaching, exploring, not drinking, moderating, all that. I got
Yeah.
my desire down so low. I just really could take it or leave it. I had a glass of rosé and I got so buzzed from that one glass of rosé. I was with my family and I just felt tired. And like when I wasn't drinking, I had this veil lifted up off my head and I could hear the birds chirping and notice all the beautiful things. And then I drank that glass of wine. I was like, I'm visualizing to everybody, like pulling down this veil over my head, like a dark veil. That's what it was like. And I'm like, I'm done. I think I am done. And that is the last, like that resolve, that decision that I made there is just like, I remember that now. Every time my brain wants to suggest, oh, you could celebrate, sometimes it'll say, oh, champagne or something, I'll be like, I remember exactly what that felt like. And I'm like, you know what that feels like.
Yeah.
Live that for you tried enough of it. You're not missing anything. Like, and so for me, I feel like it's that resolve. It's like, I'm not missing anything from it. My life is better without it, always.
Yeah. It's just facts. I mean, for me too. I'm not saying it's facts for everyone but I think when it is, it just doesn't make any sense anymore.
Yeah.
And I still ask myself that question about, like, I still ask, oh, how do you want to celebrate? I still ask it and I still answer it. It with like whatever great creative, maybe even more. I'm like, how do I want to celebrate? Because the automatic way that everyone is always showing you and that I did all those years would be to like drink something, have champagne. And so like, what do I want to do this time? Do I want to go somewhere special? Do I want to get myself a massage when we can? Whatever. What is the thing? Do I want a whole morning to myself where I like get to watch a romantic comedy, my favorite thing on the planet,
Yeah, no, I think that's good. It's like, it's a thoughtful way, a thought out way to celebrate. Whereas like the alcohol or sometimes even the food, it's just like the easy way. Sure. Of course, that's what our brain likes to do, is take the easiest way. It doesn't have to put any thought into it, but when you take that off the table, you're openly thinking about it in a more creative way. I love the trips. I'm trying to do quarterly trips this year for celebrations for business and things. So
I love it.
yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
I want to hear about that. Where are you going?
I'm going to go to Florida.
Oh, fun. Where do you live?
By myself. I live in North Carolina, actually.
You do live in North Carolina?
Yeah, I live in Chapel Hill. You live in Asheville, right? Or did you just move?
Yes, that's right.
I feel like I know a lot about you already in this 1 week relationship.
Well, I love that I'm getting to learn so much about you too. This is awesome.
Yeah. Any parting words you want to tell the people?
It's so funny. This is what I always say to my people about, when you're meant to serve with your message and thought leadership. But I want to say this here too. Like, we are designed for hard stuff too. We're designed to celebrate and we're designed to move through hard stuff. Like what I always say is, if you feel that call, and in this case, if you feel that call to remove alcohol from your life or to take a break from alcohol, know that you were made for this too. You're designed for it. And so you can totally do it, no matter what your story is, no matter what has happened in your life, no matter how many times you've tried. You were made for it.
Oh my God, you're the best.
Yeah.
I believe that too. Like, if your brain has the consciousness and idea pop up that it's a possibility, you can make it happen. I fully believe that.
Yeah, me too.
It's so fun. I love it. Thank you so much. So tell people a little bit about you, how they can follow you if they are somebody that's looking for a coach for speaking, or any of that stuff. How can they get in touch with you?
So they can get in touch with me at michellebarryfranco.com. So that's my website. And I am on Instagram at Michelle B. Franco. And those are probably the best places.
You have a podcast too, right?
I do have a podcast that actually I stopped doing. So I was on sabbatical. I love a sabbatical. So I was on podcast sabbatical. That one wasn't edgy or hard. That was just a decision. But I wasn't sure if I wanted to stop that one. I'm about to start a new one. So, but it's called Brilliance at Work. People still write to me all the time that they listen to it tons. If someone is listening who is in business and knows that they want to be a leader in their industry, listen to the Brilliance at Work podcast. Tons of great interviews and also lots of advice about how clarity of message and taking a stand for your work in the world.
You're amazing. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'll link up all
Thank
that
you.
in the show notes too, so
Cool.
everybody can find
Okay.
you. But thank you so much for coming on.
I had so much fun. Thanks for inviting me.
Thank you. We'll talk soon. That was so good. Thank you, Michelle. It was so amazing for you to come on and spend your time with us on the podcast today. Now, listen, y'all. If you have been hearing that whisper from yourself that you've got to do something about your relationship with alcohol, please know that I can help you. It is my mission and my purpose to help women like Michelle, like myself. If you identified with our stories, you can stop over drinking and start living the life that you are meant to live authentically, the way you want to. Click through, fill out the application to join my Stop Over Drinking and Start Living program. Watch the videos there on that page, get all the details, and take that next step. There's no obligation for you to fill out the application, but it lets your brain know and your true self know that you are taking this seriously and you're ready to do something different. Oh, and if you haven't signed up for my free class that is happening next week, please do so. The link to do that as well is through the show notes. So just click through. It's called It's Not About the Alcohol. It's a free 75-minute class where I'm going to talk to you about why we're over drinking in the first place. Most of my clients, before they come to me, have tried taking breaks and moderating and doing all the things, and they focus so much on not drinking or drinking less. They don't solve why they're drinking in the first place. So that's what I'm going to help you do in this class. So you don't want to miss it. Click through, sign up. You'll get an email from me with all the details, and we will see you there. I love you all so much. Have a beautiful week. Bye.